Good morning, guys. All right. I
Morning,
hope
Prof.
you are okay, even though it's so early in the morning. I hope you had your breakfast. You took a nice cup of tea or coffee so that you're awake. Now, not all of you are here, but we can start. And today the presentation is on Nick Bostrom. And the presenters are,
Me and
remind
Viet.
me of who's presenting today.
Prof, can you hear me? Prof, can you hear me?
Who
Hold
are
on.
the presenters for this week? For this week?
Hold on. Sorry, Prof. It's me. Hold on, Can you hear me?
Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear us? Can you hear me? Wait, Johannes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Well, we'll see who the presenters are.
No.
No, I cannot hear you.
Oh.
Okay, now I can. Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm presenting with Viet. Prof.
Okay.
Me.
Great.
Yes.
So you end.
Viet.
Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. All right. So I leave the floor to you guys, and then we go on as usual with the discussion. All right.
Yes. Okay. So, morning, everybody. On this 8:30 a.m. morning class. So we'll be presenting on, as Prof. Paulo mentioned, on Nick Bostrom. So Nick Bostrom is a Swedish professor. And anyway, yeah, Swedish professor slash philosopher, and is his introduction. So this will be the sort of flow of our presentation today, which is a summary of Nick Bostrom's superintelligence, or rather the interview, the keynote speech, or whatever you can call it, the analysis, as well as the key questions which would follow.
Yeah. By the way, he's a professor, not just at any university. He's a professor at Oxford.
Right, he's a professor at Oxford.
No, I mean, that's something that you should reflect carefully about.
Yes, of course.
All right.
So this is a key image that he shares, but basically he's in short, this video he starts with sharing that humans might go extinct, as with the many creatures that have existed before, and raises the ideas that there's two directions in which the human species can go to, essentially up or down. Up is when humanity reaches a cosmic endowment state, in which human is prosperous in all aspects of life and expand themselves to all planets, and the down is explained by what he coins existential risk. Risk from nature. There's two different types of risk. One is the risk from nature, like i.e. asteroids. Asteroids just come down, boom, gone, no question about it. Versus the risk due to human activity. So like basically, humans create nuclear bombs, and these, like, through time we've created nuclear bombs, and these kind of things sort of harm ourselves and have the potential to destroy the world as we know it, right? So I mean, because human activity is what he perceives that we can control, hence he focuses quite a lot on this aspect of existential risk, which he coins, especially the ones. So he mentions that, okay, yeah, he sort of says he only focuses on that because he says that if an asteroid hasn't hit in the past like million years, it's safe to say that it won't happen in the next 10. So yeah, about the risk of human activities. On this regard, he starts to speak of human activities and inventions like a black box where people pull out black balls of human inventions from a pre-presumed black box. So the key worry for him is the development of a cost-efficient tool or technology that uses techniques, either psychological or physical, that would do harm to people on a wide scale. Yeah. So he's essentially saying that nuclear bombs, thankfully, which is just an idea that's picked out of a black box, thankfully it's very expensive to make and requires key natural resources which are hard to find. But one day, humans will pick out a black ball, which would be cost efficient and a tool that would be able to destroy the whole world very easily. And this kind of tool shouldn't be widely, or shouldn't even be in the hands of the wrong people, because then that would be the end. So he then assumes some form of like technological determinism, which this assumption states that technology will continue to grow and advance to a point where all technology will be developed, i.e. every ball will be reached out, will be taken out. And the penultimate technology stack will be full. So what should we do is the question that he poses, right? How should we control or develop this pulling of the black ball? What is favorable to the human, or rather individual, in terms of technological growth? One might not see the eventual endpoint of human technology, like me and you. We might not see the eventual endpoint of technology unless there's a radical shift to the paradigm of human existence, i.e. immortality, possibly through biological enhancements. So in a scenario where he then elaborates on the scenario upon asking about how we should see the process of building technology to a state where humans would, in our lifetime, live to a point where we can achieve immortality, either through biological enhancements or thereof. So, in that aspect, he says that there's no point in indulging in arbitrary things like speed or better, things with no goal. There's no it's just super arbitrary. He mentions about someone who says, I don't know what I want, but I just want it faster, which he says is, not absurd, but rather he says that it could be dangerous, right? And he proposes two things. One is, and he proposes two things to sort of cultivate the growth of technology. One is which is to disrupt the growth of unwanted and harmful technologies, and increase pouring more resources into technologies that will be more beneficial to human society, hence pulling it back to what he said about preventing existential risk for world issues. Yeah. Now I can pass the time on to my colleague, Viet, who will continue the sharing.
Hi. Okay. Next, I will talk briefly about the idea of super intelligence, like what not really what it means. Sorry, I was on
Oh.
slide. Yeah. But not really what it means, because like Wostrom didn't really define what super intelligence is. He only presented like the two possible pathway in which it can be achieved, which is you can see in this picture. So one is through biological enhancements in order to create in order to increase the cognitive intelligence of human being to the point of super intelligence. And we can achieve this through like a few different ways, such as like embryo selections, or enhance or find some way to enhance the cognitive ability in human by like perhaps like enhance with technology, enhance with nanotechnology, or some sort of rather like science fiction technology, and to bring us human intelligence to this form of super intelligence. And the other way is to try to develop the machines and artificial intelligence to the point that it can reach this superintelligent state. And although he presented this two way, he believed that ultimately we will be able to surpass by machine intelligence. And like no matter how much resources we try to put in order to enhance human intelligence, we will lose to technology in this regard to intelligence, because that in some aspect of, let's say, computational technology, I just basically it's just simply faster than Earth. And instead of trying to beat the computer in this race of intelligence, we should spend our effort, we should focus our most intelligent scientists and mathematics in order to create a safe measure so that when the time of this machine super intelligence arrives, we can be able to control it and utilize it to the best of use. Next slide. Thank you. Yeah, then toward the end of his talk, also explain how super intelligence may exist in our world. And the first scenario happens when the intelligent explosions in machines happens extremely rapidly in basically a few single of day. So you can see here on this diagram. So basically the takeoff duration is very quick. It's very small, like a few hours or a few days, or can be a few weeks or so. So the level of system capacity, the level of machine intelligence from human to super intelligent happens very quickly. And basically this create single source and because of this rapid development of super intelligence, most likely like this form of super intelligence only comes from a single source of development, and thus we end up with a singleton super intelligence that is far more superior to other systems and could potentially shape the futures based on its own perspective. And the second scenario is quite opposite from the singleton one, in which that this takeoff duration is longer and it lasts for like few years or few decades. And what this allows is that this allows the development of machine intelligence or super intelligence to become slower and in some way more decentralized, meaning that there are more people, there are more labs, there are more science facility take part in this development of this super intelligence, and they all have a similar progress. They all progress at a similar rate. And at the end, the result is that there can be an ecology of super intelligence that is in some way more accessible everywhere. And because that there's no longer this idea of monopoly of super intelligence, the futures of the outcome may depends on not only just the multiple super intelligence, but also on the economic competitions amongst these super intelligence, as well as on the dynamic interactions between them. Yes, so that will conclude the first part of our presentation, which is the summing up of Bostrom idea of Bostrom super intelligence talks. Yeah, next I will go on to analyze like his talk. I have three key ideas I want to present, but before that, just some general views or opinion about Bostrom's talks, especially in the context of our class. Because for the past few weeks we have like discussions about the relationship between our mind and our body, or even our mind and our brain. So although again Bostrom didn't specifically define what super intelligence is, or what super intelligence or even intelligent is. From his talk, my understanding of his definition is that the intelligence is something highly functional, like the ability to learn or to perceive information or to use it to solve like some specific problem. Thus, thus the idea of a super intelligence should be a kind of system that is capable of deriving at the most optimal solution for a particular for any particular task or problem. Okay, and this can potentially pose an existential risk to human being, and this existential risk can be summarized through this example of paperclip maximizer. So what this example means is that let's say one day we have come up with a super intelligent machine, a singleton super intelligent machine, and we give it this one single goal of maximize the total number of paperclip that is available in this world. And the reason I use the example is because it's a very single task, that a very simple arbitrary task that we can give machine and see how it behaves. And so Bostrom thinks that when being given this task, the super intelligence may come up with ways that although that maximize the number of paperclip, it can pose a sort of existential risk to human being. And this is because like the super intelligence may think that in order to maximize the number of paperclip, they should eradicate all human beings, because human beings use paperclip, hence it decreases the number of paperclips. And of course this is one of the way that the super intelligence come up with, besides other more obvious ones, such as like come up with the best way to utilize resources to make paperclips. And as a result, when being given some goal without the context of human, this idea of this machine, this system of super intelligence may come up with way or solutions that actually can harm the human being. And this is something that we don't want. And how Bostrom proposed, and what Bostrom proposed to minimize this risk is by two ways. First is to not focus on setting the end state of this super intelligence, not setting the end goal of this super intelligence, but rather to motivate it through many process that's like essentially is like these processes these processes do not harm human being. And through these motivated processes, perhaps the super intelligence can learn a certain human value, and then or even have some sort of awareness that preserving humanity is something we want, and be able to be aware of a human being while working toward this indirect specified goal. Yeah, and the second way is about how we should phrase our goal when we deal with super intelligence, because goal like maximizing paperclips in some way is absolutely radical, and the idea itself, it doesn't take into account the humanity in the picture at all. Like, yeah, and similarly, goals such as stop pollutions or like reduce global warming, this goal itself, it may sound to us that it seems that it could be beneficial to human, but if we don't take into account the idea of a human being in the pictures, then when we try to phrase this goal, then then the super intelligence may do things that can harm us. So essentially, what we should do is that when we phrase our goal, we should take into account the value and the survival of human being. Yeah, and the last point of sorry, not last point. The next point is about the limitation of super intelligence. Like, do I think that super intelligence can solve all the problem in this world? I don't think so, because firstly is and Bostrom presented this. He said that there are some problem, especially social and psychological problem that can't be solved by machine, because it doesn't have a right or wrong answer. It doesn't have a clear-cut right or wrong answer, or even there's no answer that can satisfy all the party involved within this problem. And as a result, the solution to this problem are rather subjective to the party involved, based on their political or religion point of view. And as a result, machine won't be able to solve this kind of issue. But yeah, so this is a clear limitation when it comes to super intelligence in a way that like it's rather functional, and it cannot. It's very difficult to take into account the metric of humans, human, let's say, happiness or human emotions. We should come up with a goal to maximize happiness of everyone. This is a very difficult thing that human can that super intelligence is able to do, because happiness is a human goal, and like there's no happiness metric in machine, and as a result, it's hard to program something that machine doesn't really understand, and hence set it as one of the goal and asking machine to reach it. And my last point will be I'm talking about the idea of a will in super intelligence, because yeah, last week Prof asked us to think about this idea, this definition of a will when we watch this video. And although there's no clear-cut definitions of a will in this talk, how I understand of a will of a machine or a super intelligence in this case is the will is the byproduct of which the process in which it's required to achieve this goal. Let's say, for example, back again to the paperclip maximizer example, the reason the super intelligence has a will to live is because its goal is to maximize the number of paperclip in the world. And because of this goal, it understands that it may need to eradicate the human created it, because like the human may, like there's a probability that the human may shut it down, and which hinder its final goal of creating paperclip, because it can no longer being able to create it can no longer be able to have to come up with ways to maximize paperclip, which is its goal. And from an external point of view, it looks as if the machines has a will to live and is willing to eradicate humanity existence in order to preserve its own survival. But from what I see, like deep down, the so-called will is just a product of the process in which the machine needs to do in order to achieve its goal. In our case, is maximizing paperclip. As a result, I think in the case of intelligent machines, the will is something arise as a result of having a goal. And I also try to reflect this back to human, to see that whether there's any similarity between a machine will and human will. And I think that to some extent they are similar in a way that our will to do things is a combination of desire and determinations. We are willing to study hard is because that we have this desire of having a good job or earning like a lot of money after we graduate, and the amount of determinations we put into this is basically a lot. So yeah, so our will to do something can like have some sort of relationship with the goal that we have in mind. Next, I'll pass on to Sean for his part of analysis of Bostrom talk.
Thank you, Viet. So, unlike Viet, I take a little bit more of a, I wouldn't say aggressive, but I just simply don't think that the foundations of which Bostrom speaks about intelligence and solving world problems, these things doesn't scan to me, because So Viet gives Bostrom benefit of doubt when speaking about intelligence because he uses his definition. But that definition in itself, which is where intelligence is something made out of pure cognitive ability, and building a tool which has intense amount of cognitive ability to that he would then perceive as super intelligence, would overtake the humanity as we know it. But I mean, for me today, at this very moment, I know that my calculator already has far better cognitive ability than myself. That is a fact. It can calculate much faster than me, and it probably can calculate much faster than any of y'all here today. Same could be said of a machine, a noodle making machine, and a dog has better cognitive abilities than me in terms of smelling, in terms of sight, probably. I'm not so sure about sight, sorry, but in terms of smelling and other means, it can run faster than me. So it is clear that he speaks about intelligence in a way that is completely about computational functionality, and when what Viet said, which is the paperclip maximizer, is a clear example of that, where he essentially says that if you were to put a machine, i.e. super intelligent machine, in a role where it is able to make decisions, it would be able to use its super intelligence skills in its problem solving and computationally decide the best way to produce the most amount of paper clips. But at the same time, this most amount of paper clips, I mean, that in reaching that goal, it might decide to eradicate all humans. Is that a solution at all? Is a question that I ask. And if, let's say, it is a solution, then, like, I mean, computationally, like that, mathematically, yeah, but these are, the thing is that you're posing to this question, to this machine, world problems, human-made problems. Paperclips the need for paperclips is a human-made problem, and hence you are trying to bring it to a level of human decision making, right? Human level decision making, which is much more than math, So if you're bringing it down, if you're bringing intelligence down and decision making just purely down to digits and numbers, then it's clear that there's a very strong flawed thinking in him, where he views an individual just as a number. And specifically in this case, because within the talk itself, he expands very widely on eugenics, because he's saying that, if I were to be able to fertilize eggs in this way or fertilize eggs in that way, then this eggs will have 64 more IQ points. What does that mean? Like, so what if it has 64 more IQ points? It's like the range between, for IQ, direct, say 95% of the world in IQ ranges from 70 to 130, right? It's very clear that somebody in position of power could even have lower IQ than me. But does it mean that I can make better decisions than him? What does that even mean in the first place? And then we look at, okay, what are the metrics for this thing that he calls IQ, right? I mean, I've taken IQ tests before. I'm not so sure about you guys. It is basically about pattern recognition and basically answering relatively tricky or complex mathematical problems, which all of which these questions can be sort of boiled down and explained mathematically. So certain thought experiments which could be explained through math, right? That is not all you need. Math is not all you need to solve problems. There are a lot of things, especially in the world when it comes to problem solving, that requires something more than math, something basically non-physical, which is a form of feeling, a form of there's just some form of a non-physical thing pertaining to life, and humans that cannot be solved by just math, but Bostrom to him says yes it can, right? And foundationally it just doesn't scan, especially with all that we've learned in class recently. So listening to him really sort of gave me a headache, if you ask me, because he doesn't lay the foundations, and he just starts to go on a tangent about how there's this super intelligent thing that could build us. He talks about AI as though it is something that we can't control, right? But he says that we need to control it. So then where I go to next, sorry, before I go off topic, is that when we speak about this kind of artificial intelligence or machines, it must be very clear that there already are so many, as bringing it back to my first point, there are already so many machines that have better cognitive ability than us, right? But so how we've made these tools so far, and which brings you to my second point, is that, you know, humans, we don't just take things out of black boxes like this. There's some form of consideration and some form of goals in mind that we have where we create certain products. There's always a problem that we want to solve in the creation of these products. So when he talks about goals, and essentially writes a whole book about it, in making sure that now is a do or die moment, in which is the time in which we guide these machines before they reach a level of, i.e., super intelligence, which is so hard for me to say. We better guide it such that, you know, you input certain metrics or morals in it to say, oh, in the paperclip example, this paperclip machine, you shouldn't kill all humans. So that is one of the guidelines. So you want to train these things to be built a certain way. Number one, intelligence is not trained. I mean, for me, how I see it is intelligence is not trained. Intelligence is cannot be encompassed in something that is purely mathematical. Intelligence is a trait and characteristics. I am as intelligent as you are. But that is the same thing. He essentially writes a whole book and reiterates the same metric in which we've been using to develop machines or a whole time. You know, obviously you have to guide it to a certain way, and obviously you have to make sure that the things that you create have end goals that are favorable to you, to the human world as is. If not, what's the point of, I mean, isn't that just the same thing that we've all been doing the entire time? So it didn't feel like, I wouldn't say it's a waste. It was a waste of listening to his lecture, but it's more of like, I was very confused at the point that he was driving, because while it makes sense, it's not necessarily something that is wild or radical. It to me sounded like reiterating common sense. And secondly, the way that he speaks about solving world problems as though they're mathematical equations doesn't scan. On a side note, the mere fact that he speaks about eugenics in a way, or he reaches this thing where, oh, I can create a human with more IQ points, shows his view of what it is to be a human. You know, he sees things so clearly in a box where all that is just numbers. You are your brain. He says it himself. You see something, it goes to this mental context and blah blah blah. Everything is true. Electrons and neurons proven. That's it. Purely functional. There's nothing immaterial about it. And that's obviously his point of view. And if he were to say these kind of things, and he were to reduce the human to a mere number, which he did, I cannot trust you to tell me what a desirable outcome would be, you know, with regards to machines. I would refuse to listen to you in a point where to the point where you know, you are talking about guiding machines and you know, reaching a desired world outcome. But if you're going to reduce all of us to that, I don't think you're even a right person to talk about it, because you are refuting or eliminating so many joys and so many aspects of human life and human intelligence of sorts in his discussions. So to sort of summarize what I've said, basically, no matter what, these machines are solving human problems, and they are still man-made by men. They cannot. It is. There's no question about it. If actually these machines kill us all, it won't be a result of super intelligence. It will be a result of poor programming. It is just to me, that is as clear as day. It is not taught. Sorry, it did not think to do these things. It just simply calculated to do these things, which eventually harmed the human being. Yeah, as we all know it, and that's the fear that he has. Is essentially a miscalculation. So his concerns are right in the sense that we must make sure that doesn't happen. But the terms that he uses and the foundations in which he thinks about this problem is clearly misguided in my opinion. So yeah, that is all for my analysis. Sorry if I was a bit I needed some morning. It's a bit early, so I need to like get myself riled up by talking about this. Yeah, sorry for any disjointed kind of arguments as well. I would love to talk to you about it. So next up, what we have is a series of key questions. So the first question is, let's say we were to use the definitions as proposed by Nick Bostrom, right? How can we really work on ensuring the safety of super intelligence when we have yet to create or realize what super intelligence is capable of, i.e. The very good and cognitive special machine? How would one account in a machine non-physical characteristics like morals? So Nick Bostrom, so these are questions which I would pose to Nick Bostrom as well. And I would invite us to think, you know, for some reason in his mind as well. So, or into him in his brain. So, how will one account in a machine non-physical characteristics like morals? Essentially, because he's saying that he wants to build. Eventually, there will be a super intelligence in machines, but you must guide it in a certain way. How do you guide a machine morals, and how would that be embedded in a machine? You know, because that is something that is so immaterial. Yeah. Sorry, and not non-physical. Number 3 is, would the mind, because recently we've been talking about how the mind and the body, and there's discussions whether the mind is inside the brain or vice versa, or they're two separate things, and there's a lot of discussions regarding that. And hence, when we recently came up to the conclusion that, you know, mind has a certain connotation with culture. So would the mind live on if the world ends in a doomsday scenario? And when I ask this question, is pertaining to the immaterial things. So if we've decided, and if we've seen that mind in fact is something that is immaterial, non-physical, where would it be at the end of it all? You know, as what he mentions in the doomsday scenario, where an asteroid hits, or maybe if the machines kill us all, what will happen to the human mind? And lastly, is that in a scenario of a technological breakthrough, how would biological immortality affect the way we think about ourselves? meaning that if immortality was just around the corner and we are able to achieve this form of immortality, what would that mean for us humans? And now, and with that, we conclude our presentation. Thank you so much for listening. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Very good presentation, both of you. Very engaging, very thoughtful from both of you. So let's go again through the questions, the key questions that you're posing, and then we open the discussion. So how can we really work on ensuring the safety of superintelligence when we're yet to create or realize what superintelligence is capable of? How would one account in a machine non-physical characteristics like morals? Would the mind live on if the world ends in a doomsday scenario? In the scenario of a technological breakthrough, how would biological immortality affect the way we think about ourselves? Okay, so these are all interesting questions, diverse in many ways. I think in order to afford these questions, we should go back to the point on will that Viet and Sean have expanded on. And if I'm correct, correct me guys if I'm wrong, if I understood wrongly. It seems to me that Viet seems to think that eventually a machine could reach will, because will is in the end just the result of having a goal, of working towards a goal. So since I'm working towards a goal, then I have a will. That's, if I'm not wrong, that's what Viet seems to be saying. Whereas Sean,
Sorry, I think for Viet, for how I read it, is that he seems to think that it would seem as though there is a certain type of will because it is in its doing. If a machine is in its doing, or in its calculating the task that it was taught to do, there would be some form of there might be some showcasing of will. Yeah, or like like a facade of will. If that's how I read it, at least, instead of what is true human will, and it is that is something different. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, so basically, Viet seems to say, if I understand you correctly now, that what Bostrom implies as will in a machine is just a resemblance of real will.
Resemblance, like that is my perspective about how a machine wheels looks like what Sean said. Yeah, that's my idea of machine wheel. And with regard to human wheel, I don't really know. I don't really think that it's completely the same as machine's wheel, but I think there's some resemblance in the machine's wheel in a way that there's the idea of goal involved in when we talk about will.
Yes. So you say that the main characteristic of will is having a goal.
Yes, and like the how much are you willing to achieve that goal? And in the machine case, because like if super intelligent for singleton super intelligence, that is the single final goal it has. So it will spend all of its resources, like whatever it can do, in order to achieve that goal.
Okay, all right. Whereas Sean, on this point, what do you think? You say that machines cannot have will because if I'm
Yes.
right,
Yeah. I machines, because there's a difference when we say things like I will, and the will to live, is that's not a functional, that's not a functional thing, right? That is something that is non-functional about it. Carrying out a task is not willing your way doing. Carrying on a task that is given to you is not something that pertains to will. carrying on a task is simply, as you said, is a function and is carrying on a task. But the fact is that you say the resources to do it. When you have, and then the question I would pose is, let's say you are getting yourself into, you want to get into the best university, and in this case, I try my best to get into SUTD, which is the best university. Um, I willed through, and I did my best, and at trying to achieve this goal, right? I eventually did it, but there are certain points in time where I willed to do other things, or like I basically faltered in a way. Sorry, I don't think I'm getting at the right example, but rather just because will would have something to do with there's some form of like variance in a way that just because you have will doesn't mean that you'll achieve your goal, and you don't necessarily need will to achieve a certain goal you are tasked to as well. It's like it is it is non-dependent that way, but they can work together is where I'm trying to get at.
I get your point, and I see how what you're saying can be formalized in a sharper way.
Yes, apologies for that.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you're trying to get at something that is very complicated, and you've done a good. You've taken good steps, so to say, towards that determination. So before we go into the questions that these 4 questions that you posed, I want to open the discussion precisely on this topic of will. And again, let me remind you the terms, guys, that Viet and Sean have been using. They both say that there is some kind of relation between goal and will. Now, Viet says that will depends on goal, on having a goal, right? And in that sense, what the machine do resembles what we do, and hence we can say that there is a sort of will in machines. Whereas Sean is suggesting that goal and will are not necessarily do not walk necessarily together, and we cannot say that one is dependent on the other, because goal can be seen even just as performing a task, which can be done by anything that has been set to perform a task, whereas will seems to be something more complicated. So these are the terms on this problem of will. So I leave the floor to you to hear what you think about it and what you think about will.
Okay, hi Prof. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, I think I'm leaning more towards Sean's argument of what will is and whether it has any relation between will and goal. So the way I see it as well is, like, one example I'll bring up is what exactly is the goal of humans. So I don't necessarily think that we all have an end goal in mind, right? So humans, we don't really have this particular end goal that we're working towards with, but we have a will. So this will doesn't come as a result of having a goal in mind. You know, along the way we have different wills to do different things. But if you look in terms of a machine, like what Sean mentioned as well, simply doing something, you know, carrying out a task, you don't need to have a will to do that. So yeah, so I would lean towards more of that agreement, and I will also start to think about more, you know, what exactly is the goal of human beings. Yeah, so that's where I'm going into.
Very good, very good observation. Some other voice.
I mean, based on our discussion last week, seems like will has to do with self-consciousness, because only with the how can I put it? Okay. Sorry, my mind is still not fully awake right now.
Now take your time. No hurry. If you need more time to think it through, maybe we can pass
Okay, maybe
the
someone
word
else can.
to someone else.
Yeah.
Whoever wants to intervene.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, okay. So I believe that actually, uh, I don't think I think it's like a false dichotomy between what Viet said and what Sean said. I think that personally, I agree with what Sean said. Like, will is definitely more complex than just having a goal, but because it seems like a will can be organic as well. Like, it's just comes out naturally. Like, for example, our instinctive will to survive as living as a human. So it can be sort of like it's organic, but I do see where Viet is coming from as well. As in, because it seems like in the pursuit of a goal, and then it's like if you suppose what a human would do, like in the pursuit of a goal, there's this, like, regardless of what obstacles we face, because of our will, we'll try to overcome it. So if you're a machine with a programmed goal, overcome the obstacles that it faces in trying to achieve its goal, it seems like it demonstrates how a will will work also in a human. So I believe that's where he's coming from. So I can see it. I can see where he's coming from as well.
Yeah.
But I think Sean's definition would encompass what Viet is trying to say as well. So I don't think it's like a dichotomy between the 2 points.
Yeah.
Rather, it's that's how I feel.
They
That's how I
are.
think.
I agree with you. I mean, I think that the point here is that the word goal is an ambiguous word.
Okay.
To say, it can be used in 2 ways. Before telling you in which way it is ambiguous, I want to again hear someone else, and then.
Sorry.
Okay, since nobody else wants to comment, let me explain to you in which sense I mean that the word goal is ambiguous. Let's start from an example. Okay, I'll tell you something gross, okay? Something gross that I think is going to make you understand what precisely the problem is. Imagine that I have to go to the bathroom. And I stand up and I go to the bathroom. And in the bathroom I am, and I do my, my corporeal functions, so to say. In doing that, have I fulfilled the goal? In other words, could I say, if I say, oh, I have the goal to go pooping, can I say that? Can I say that and put it together with, I'm going to 7-Eleven to buy milk? Is it the same thing? No, right? Because I could very well decide not to go to 7-Eleven and not to buy milk. I could very well decide that. Sorry, let me close here because there's a fire. Okay, a bit better now. So I could very well decide not to go to 7-Eleven and not to buy milk, a pack of milk. But I cannot decide not to go to the bathroom when I have the stimulus, right? Now, what does this tell us? That there are certain functions that, yes, end up into a certain result. When I go to the bathroom, I end up freeing myself of my burden, right? But this result is not doesn't come from an act of will. I have to do it. Or, you know, when I'm sleepy, I'm very sleepy. And I say, okay, I want to go to bed. When I say I want to go to bed, one could say, oh, so you have the goal to go to bed. Can I say that? Not really. Because I like it or not, I'm going to fall asleep. I want it or not, I'm going to fall asleep. What does this mean? If we use the language of machines, we could say that my body biologically is programmed in such a way that 4 or 5 times a day it has to urinate. 1 time a day it has to defecate. 1 time a day or twice a day it has to sleep. 2, 3 times a day it has to eat. And there is nothing I can do about this. That's the way it works. Now, of course, each of these things ends up into something, in me being rested, in me being freed of, you know, undesirable substances in my bowels, in me filling my stomach, so being satiated, and so on and so forth. But none of these are really goals. Whereas there are a lot of things that are goals. I go to a foodie market to buy roast beef. I go then to Kampong Glam to buy pipe tobacco. And then I decide to stay in Kampong Glam and go to the Turkish coffee shop and have a Turkish coffee. And then from there, I decide to wait for my wife and meet her at the end of her work day. And then I decide that I want to be gallant and take her out to dinner. I never decide that because I'm stingy, because I decide instead to save my money, right? Now, here the question would be, who do you love more, the money or your wife? And hence, when you preserve money, are you fulfilling a goal or you're just subservient to your stinginess? That's another, you know, the thing gets a bit more complicated there, but it's another set of questions. All these other things are goals because I set them, and I can decide not to set them to begin with, or as Sean was saying, once I set them, I can very well fault and say, you know what, I won't go to Kampong Glam because now I've decided that I shouldn't smoke so much. Rest assured, it will never happen with me for your amusement and for the pocket of Charlie who sells me tobacco. But you see, so goals, to use now a philosophically more sharp language, goals are not predetermined. Functions are predetermined. Now, what do machines have? What do machines carry out? Functions or goals? when I set up, let's think of a simple machine, okay? When I set up, I don't know, well, a simple machine I can think of is the very artisanal way, ancient way in which I make sourdough for my bread, right? If you will, yes, I'm cultivating them. There are some living cultures, bacteria, but it is done so through some sort of very rudimentary machine, which consists in a can, a big, glass jar, in which every day I mix a certain amount of flour with a certain amount of water, okay? Now, it's not that the machine sourdough container at a certain point can say, oh, you know what? I don't want really to be filled with this filthy sourdough. I'm going to free myself of it and take a walk. Or, oh, you know what? I think that master didn't put enough honey to help the sourdough. So I'm going to open the honey jar and put some honey in it. It doesn't happen. One could say, yeah, but because that's a very rudimentary machine. Take a computer instead. A computer might be able to do that. How though? In order for you to formulate a goal, you must have, first of all, some kind of consciousness, and above all, self-consciousness. Let me give an example about how goals need self-consciousness, not only consciousness. A dog is hungry. So a dog looks for food or asks food, demands food, right? When you give him food, or when the dog finds food, it's gonna eat. Can you say that the dog had a goal, had formulated a goal, and then found ways to fill it up, to fulfill it? No. Why? Because the dog couldn't do anything else but eating. He was completely led by his hunger. Whereas the human being can be hungry and even when presented with food, refuse it. For example, imagine that I am a Jewish person or a Muslim person and I'm very hungry. And someone presents to me pork. I won't eat it if I'm very religious, because I have set myself to the goal of sticking up to the rules in the Quran or the Torah, depending on what I am. Or, doing an example closer to me, I'm a Catholic, right? We have entered the Lent period in which you shouldn't eat meat, you shouldn't eat sweet things, and blah, 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 blah. So say that I'm very hungry and that someone gives me a very nice piece of roasted lamb shoulder. Well, I can decide not to eat it because I don't want to break Lent, right? A dog is incapable of that. But why? Because a dog is caught in whatever biological stimulus it has at the moment, is under at the moment. So can we say that animals have goals? Apparently no. It doesn't seem so. So the ambiguous word there is goal. Goal cannot be cannot exist as the result of a predetermined function. Be it a biological or a mechanical function. Goal is not the result of a program. In other words, program and goal are opposite. Now, we just said that in order for you to have goals, you must be not only conscious, but self-conscious. When it comes to machines, machines are clearly not conscious. Because if I pet my computer, it's not that my computer is going to start shaking and going all happy. Whereas if I pet my dog, it's going to do that. But on top of it, computers are not even self-conscious. And they can't be self-conscious because they're not conscious to begin with. The first stage of self-consciousness is feeling. All living things, all the most complex ones, have some kind of obscure self-consciousness. That's why dogs can dream. It's not really a self-consciousness, but is the result of feeling, right? A machine doesn't have that, so how can a machine have self-consciousness? There is no way. A computer does what it does because it is programmed to do that. So a computer fulfills a function. At that point, is it plausible to think that one day the giant paperclip, to use the example of Bostrom, is going to decide, that is to say, is going to set the goal of maximizing what it perceives? I mean, listen to the language that Bostrom is forced to use. The giant paperclip decides, and there is already will, and hence the setting of goals, to maximize what it perceives as waste of energy, waste of production in other human activities. Here there is a series of things involved. There is the assumption that the paperclip, the giant paperclip, can decide. Hence, in order to decide, the giant paperclip must understand what it's doing. And moreover, it doesn't only understand what it's doing, but is able also to comparing it to other human activities. So we are implying, in other words, that the giant paperclip understands what it has been programmed to do and can decide to enhance this in such a way as to wipe out any impediment, any hindrance to its functions. This is impossible. It's impossible just by when we look at what the words goal, decision, understanding, perception point to. They all point to a certain living thing which on top of it has self-consciousness besides being conscious. Hence the headache that Sean kept saying he was having while listening to Bostrom. Bostrom uses a jumbled up ensemble of concepts that once you start perusing them, they don't hold water the way he puts them together. So long story short, goal is linked to will because goal is the result of having a will. And will is, one aspect of will is freedom. When we say freedom, that's what we are talking about. We're talking about the fact that the human being can say yes or no. Whereas even more complex living things like dogs, elephants, or whatever, horses, they are not capable of yes and no. They do what they are under in that moment. So if they're hungry, they eat. If they want to go out, If they feel the need to go out, they go out. If they feel the need to mate because they smell that the female is in heat, they mate. Now, the problem philosophically becomes the problem of freedom now. And it becomes, it can be framed if we look at how Descartes framed the thing. Descartes framed the thing in such a way as to ask, how can I find the better way to, the best way to lead my will, to organize my will? In other words, how can I find the perfect way to always will what I should will? And that's why Descartes then tries to develop that kind of thought which is mathematically based. The idea of Descartes is that perfect will is that will that adheres perfectly to those in his mind already set mathematical programs based on which both our mind and the universe are organized. But then there you have a very hoary problem, which is the following. If you say, as Descartes suggests, if you say that will can be perfectly directed, is it still will? And if you abolish will, haven't you abolished the human being and its freedom? So the question, in other words, becomes really that of freedom when it comes to will. I would stop for here now, because I've given you a lot of stuff to think about. So this coming Friday, let's start again from these 4 questions that Viet and Sean have proposed to us. So please, Viet and Sean, re-propose to us these questions on Friday, okay? Put them there again at the beginning of class. And what I would ask you to do, guys, is to just reflect, because there is nothing else to do. Just reflect on this topic of will. If you wanna sort of confront yourself as you reflect with something, I would suggest you to read Descartes' Meditations. I can upload them if you want on eDimension for you to have them. I don't remember now in which particular meditation he talks of will. I think number 4, or I will check it up and let you know. But you shouldn't read Descartes just to tell me what Descartes says. That's not the important thing. The important thing is that you, each one of you, comes up with some reflection on will by yourself, okay? And on what it is precisely, okay? And we discuss this. All right? And Descartes, if you want, can be used as a sort of point of comparison to whatever you come up with. In any case, let me sum things up. The point that I'm trying to make here is that, as Sean tried to say, and Viet also tried to say, having a goal is an act of will already in itself. And as such, it cannot be equated to something predetermined. It cannot be talked about in the frame of something predetermined. Hence, machines cannot have goals. A machine does what it does because it has been programmed to do it. My body poops because it is biologically programmed to poop. But my body doesn't go to buy milk because it has been biologically programmed to buy milk. It goes to buy milk because I want to drink milk. Why do I want to drink milk? Well, that's my own business, right? Why I want to drink milk. Which, I mean, it might sound like a funny answer, but how many times when people tell us, yes, but why do you want it? Well, because that's what I want, right? So reflect on this, and I hope that on Friday, besides Viet, Johannes, Sean, Chichao, Noor, that I've heard a lot from, I would hear also from others. This is really a focal point, all right? Then once we're done with this is week 5, correct?
Yeah.
All right, so week 6, as we said, we're gonna just stop and I'm gonna just listen to your questions. So you may wanna start, each of you, formulating questions that you have, and each one will have the opportunity to ask a question during week 6. Then week 8 is the midterm. If you agree, we can use the 1.5 hours of the 2 sessions to hold the midterm. So that we're gonna have 3 hours instead of you straining yourself in the afternoon, which is gonna be tough for you, because I know that many of you, all of you in fact, take other courses. So it won't be pleasant for you to spend Wednesday and Friday afternoon doing oral exams. Let's use the 1.5 hours and 1.5 hours to do the oral exam, so that is going to be easier for everybody. And then week 9, I'm thinking now to change slightly what I wanted to, how I want to continue. And in order to understand how we got into this problem that is really central to AI and the discussion about it, let's say, intelligence and will, we should read Descartes. And we focus particularly on the formulation of the problem by Descartes, the way I just presented it to you, okay? All right? Okay, guys. So I'll see you on Friday, God willing. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof.
You, bro.
Bye.
Thank you, Prof. Bye.
Bye.